So my name is Ginnipal Singh, and today is the 7th of February, 2013. I was about 8 years old. Yeah, my family is from Bombay. My parents, my two sisters, and so I was a student. All of us were students at that time. Yeah, we were in Bombay around that time, and so we obviously heard about the attack from the media and from family and friends, and it was very disturbing at that time. So Bombay was more kind of I think blocked out at that time. So जिस तरह पंजाब विच और दिल्ली side, खबर काफी जल्दी फैलती है. The at least when you're in places like Bombay, at that time news doesn't travel that quickly, right? So I don't remember the exact details, but I do remember a lot of this was from you know from others, and and also from the media. It's a very biased view, right? What you hear is not what really happened. Pretty young, so the memories of June '84, because November '84 is a lot more vivid for me, because we lived through it, versus June '84 you're almost kind of insulated from a lot of what happened, right? Particularly being in a place like Bombay. So I don't really remember what I heard, but maybe some of these emotions come in later in life too, right? Where you kind of think back about what happens, and you really feel that sense of loss and betrayal and pain and sadness and anger. I mean, this was just the way the media, or the way the mainstream kind of pitches it as they had to do it for security reasons. I mean, that's all made up stuff, right? Nothing justifies such a uh, unfair targeting of a particular people, right? So, and given the importance of Hamad Sahab, given it was a Gurpurab, given the number of people there, you think about all these things. Just even if you're emotionally not connected, and you think about it from an objective level, and it's very hard to make that argument that they had to do what they had to do. It just doesn't make sense, right? If you had to do it, why didn't you do it on a different day? Why didn't you do it at a time where there weren't as many people, right? Nothing justifies what they did, but what makes it even more uh, you know unfair, and I would say criminal, is the fact that they chose that day, and they chose so clearly their objective was to target our people, and clearly the objective was to put that fear. And Guru Sahib's grace, they don't know. November 1984, so coincidentally around that time we were actually visiting Varanasi, or Banaras as it's commonly known. My dad's older sister, my Bua, uh, she she lives there, or she used to live there. She's passed away now. She and her family are a very prominent family in that town, and we were kind of on a holiday visiting them, spending time with them, and this was we went there just prior to the program. I think it was around maybe afternoon time. I don't remember the exact time. So myself, my dad, my older cousin, we were out having coffee, right? And that's when the news first came in, about Indira Gandhi. And at that time, you don't want to seem cold and cruel about anyone passing away, but you have a sense of justice being done, right? So that's just the reality, right? There's no politically correctness talk around it. So at that time, we were, this is Guru's will, right? Justice is done. It didn't even cross our mind that there would be that level of sophistication in how they would target all of us, right? So after that we came back home, and I think there was no level of preparation, or or anxiety about what's going to happen. We were would say completely surprised, right? And my wife and my bua's house or family, just to give you some context, they live in a pretty big, they used to live in that particular house way back. It's a very big koti. A lot of folks in the family. My bua had 4 children and their families. Some of them were visiting. There were some guests in the house. There was a paisa who does seva in the Guru Sahib's, just Guru Sahib das Sarup hai. We had a couple of guests, and incidentally, one of them was the daughter of a very prominent police official from another state. So there were a lot of folks a lot of people in the house at that time. And as night set in, that's when that's the first time we were targeted right at that night. I'm trying to remember back now, but we started hearing some news of some houses or some families being targeted, and that this criminal activity had started. And then closer to the night, as it became clear that we would be targeted, given she was a very her husband and the family was very prominent in the community there. I think we were about 20 of us in the house at that time. There was a room at the back of the house where we all kind of went to, and then around, I'm trying to remember the time, it could be between 9 or 10. That's when the organized mob attacked the house, right? So they broke through the front gate. They threw these, in the bottle they make these, the Molotov, the bombs, petrol bombs. They burned the outside of the generator. Outside the house, they burned down, and we were in the backside of the house in this small room, and 20 of us, as you can imagine, and I kind of, even though I was really young, this is so vivid in my memory. There was, a few kirpans on the table. I think my dad and my older cousin had a revolver each, the licensed revolver, and that's it. I mean, they did ardas, and they were all ready, and they said, you know what, we'll go down fighting, right? And it's so vivid in my mind, even though we were so young. I don't know what saved us, right? I mean, so the mob clearly they were more keen on looting. I don't know how they overlooked the fact that we were in the back of the house, and so clearly they burned down a better part of the house, or at least set fire to a lot of the house, and they pretty much looted the whole place. I don't clearly remember why they dispersed. They never really broke down that door. It could be, they moved on to other targets. It could be they thought no one was in the house, but that was probably, that half an hour or however long they were in the house was obviously very traumatic, right, for a lot of us. And during that half an hour, a lot happened, right? So my sisters were upstairs, and I remember just before the mob broke down the front gate, my dad had to run up and get them, and there was a general sense of, this is it, right? These are the goodbyes, and we did our das together, and that was it. And this first started breaking out, and eventually the phones all went dead, and there was no contact to the outside world, right? Even though his daughter was there, he couldn't do anything. His hands were tied. He couldn't. There was no one he could turn to in this town of Varanasi or Banaras who could help him. So when you think about how quickly, how well organized, how targeted, that the police was nowhere around, that they showed up well after the fact, the fact that a very prominent official couldn't even protect his own daughter. I mean, we know how things work in India, right? If you're the senior most police official in a town, you can make things happen. The fact that there was almost a prior activity to tie some folks' hands who would want to, interject. The fact that they knew who they were targeting, and obviously, when you talk to others in Delhi and all this, they found list of houses well before, Indira Gandhi was brought to justice. All of these point to, very kind of, this was obviously organized. It was state sponsored. They were in cahoots with the the law enforcement. I don't know who individually it was. We never saw the face of the mob, but clearly they've got to be really, I actually, I want to tell the whole part of the story, right? That night was one part of it, and then we went to another house, a close family member's house. There was no electricity, no phone, no nothing, no food. You went a few nights hiding there. Um, Eventually, we found out that house was going to be attacked, moved to another place. Eventually we were, you know, we found safety in, very ironically, in a Sindhi family's house, right? There was this old gentleman who lived with his sons and their families, and they protected us. So it's very, interesting that, this is not about a religion, right? This is not about someone, with a religious bias attacking another religion. This is really about people who had hatred in their mind, or they had some political agenda, or they had an agenda to put fear or annihilate our community. Um, that was their objective. Or it was pure greed, loot, jealousy. Hey, let's use this opportunity. So there could be multiple aspects of what motivated that level of hatred and bigotry. Um, why they did what they did is, that's for them to answer, right? But clearly, this wasn't a spontaneous because they loved Indira Gandhi and then suddenly, they couldn't let their emotions control. Clearly, that's not what happened, right? This was well thought through, organized. They had all the resources, and again, my what happened to us is a part of it. But as you look into the other towns, clearly this was organized at a much wider scale, right? And you can't do that, well, maybe with social media today you can, but 28 odd years ago you couldn't do that, right? So you look at all the information, and it's hard to not make the case that this was organized. Apparently, everyone was very traumatized for a fair bit of time. I remember, even eventually we kind of, after everything seemed safer and settled, we flew back to Bombay, and my mom, for the longest time, you know, even with firecrackers going off somewhere in the night, she used to. Clearly, either we were too young or too naive, right? But that level of traumatization for some of the families, and this is, with Guru's grace, we didn't lose anyone, right? There was no, uh, you can't imagine what families who actually lost someone or had to go through, an even tougher time had to go through, right? This was, clearly the baggage, the emotional impact is long term, right? I remember when another prime minister got assassinated. You know, my mom, and she's a very, brave, fearless lady, right? And her first reaction was, God, I hope it's not a sick. I can't go through it again, right? So you can sense it, even though they may not have shown it or portrayed it to us, that deep inside them, there was that sense of, we're going to be targeted again, right? Or, this could happen anytime. That sense of insecurity. Um, even after that, like, there was a bias or a discrimination in the workplace. My dad probably had to go through it. Growing up, you have kids picking on you all the time. So there are ramifications down the line, right? But this is obviously nothing compared to what families who may have lost a loved one had to go through. So yeah, I haven't thought of it along those lines, right? But clearly as a community, it's changed us, right? I don't know, individually, it's probably made you a lot more suspectful. It's hard to trust, right? And again, we are here now in the U.S. and it's a different environment altogether. Um, but it's hard to emotionally overcome some of those, you know. Just the fact that it could happen, and I think we've kind of almost desensitized ourselves that, hey, India is there, chalta hi hai, it happened in Gujarat, happened in other places. But if you really think back, right, it's like, how could this happen? This is a so-called democratic, law-abiding society, right? And here you clearly had, Rajiv Gandhi saying, yeah, the ground will shake, right? So the fact that it was condoned, the fact that, it happened at such a large scale, it kind of, it puts a sense of insecurity in your mind about, what our future would be, right, in that country. And that kind of, probably at back of our mind, that's what motivated me to come here. So, I think more broader is what impact did it have on our community, and it clearly, set us back. But looking at it positively, the sense of resiliency, and before you guys came, I was talking to my son about, what we are going to talk about. I've never had that discussion with him, and which is why I want to thank you both for doing this. Is this is important for our children to know what we went through, and uh, you know, how strong, how resilient our community is. We're really proud of who we are, uh, and even these cowardly and hate-driven activities. I don't think we can start hating everybody around us, right? So that's hopefully a lesson I've learned, because I'm married to someone who comes from a different religious background, and with Guru's grace, she's really on the Guru's path. But we can't hate others, because that's not what Guru Sahib taught us. But clearly, we need to be more protected, or we need to kind of be more cautious as we move ahead, right? Okay, thank you.